Support for this podcast comes from the Central Valley Journalism Collaborative, connecting communities with the resources, infrastructure, and networks to ensure a vibrant local free press.
From KVPR in Fresno, this is Central Valley Daily. It's Wednesday, July 23rd. I'm Elizabeth Arkalian. A local political consultant sent out inflammatory mailers before a recent Fresno election. It's unclear who paid him to send those out, and some say that's concerning.
And at the end of the day, these mailers are designed to influence voters, influence outcomes of elections.
Coming up, a reporter from Fresnoland talks to us about the influence of so-called dark money in local elections. But first, these headlines. A national progressive group has endorsed a candidate who is challenging a Valley House Republican. The Working Families Party is backing Randy Villegas, who announced his run against David Valadao earlier this year for House District 22. Villegas is a school board trustee in Visalia, but he's not the only Democrat seeking to unseat Valadao. Assemblymember Jasmeet Bains also announced her campaign last week. Inspectors at the state's worker safety agency often don't visit work sites, even after employees report injuries. That's according to a new state audit on California OSHA. CalMatters' Jeannie Kwong has more.
According to the audit, last year Cal OSHA only sent inspectors to a fifth of the roughly 10,000 complaints the agency deemed valid. In one example cited in the audit, a kitchen worker reported poor ventilation, broken AC, and 90-degree days at work. But inspectors did not visit the workplace even though the worker was taken to the emergency room for suspected heat illness. Cal OSHA chose to send a letter in lieu of doing an on-site inspection. Cal OSHA is supposed to send inspectors to the site of workplace deaths and serious accidents. In all other accidents and complaints, the agency can choose whether to send someone, but auditors found cases where they said workers would have benefited from an inspection. Both leadership at the agency and the auditor cited staff shortages as a big issue. Nearly a third of Cal OSHA positions were vacant last year.
That was Jeannie Kwong with CalMatters. A beloved park in Fresno has received a $1 million boost in funding. KVPR's Carrie Klein reports on renovations coming to Storyland announced on Tuesday.
The park may be the home of the old woman who lived in a shoe, Alice in Wonderland, and King Arthur's castle, but its bathrooms are unusable. The current ones are actually rentals, and it's behind on the Americans with Disabilities Act, or ADA. Here's park board member Joe Denham.
Our first priority, I think, is going to be better ADA access. The park was built in 1962, and that really wasn't a concept in existence then.
That's why Fresno Mayor Jerry Dyer, alongside Councilmember Tyler Maxwell, presented the park with a giant check.
We could not, as a council and my administration, think of a better use of $1 million than right here at Storyland.
The money will be used to renovate those bathrooms, update walkways and ramps for wheelchair access, and also build new play structures. The funds come from a city sales tax known as Measure P. For KVPR News, I'm Carrie Klein.
Plans to build the world's largest Costco in Fresno are on pause again. A judge sided with a group of residents on Tuesday who've pushed to stop the project. The chain store was originally supposed to open this summer. However, the Fresno Bee reports a judge has ruled that the city did not conduct sufficient environmental review for the project. The judge also said the city violated zoning laws. It's unclear if the city will appeal the ruling or attempt to continue the project. A 1-year-old baby boy who died in a hot car in Bakersfield has been laid to rest. Family of the boy held a funeral at a Porterville cemetery this week. The boy's mother remains in custody in Kern County and faces potential murder charges. Authorities say the boy's mother allegedly left him in a hot car while she attended a medical spa late last month.
Congress has eliminated public funding for America's local public broadcasting stations like KVPR. But while we've been defunded, we're not defeated. We're working to replace the funding that was lost to reduce the severity of cuts to programs and local coverage. When you become a new monthly supporter of KVPR, you ensure that Valley listeners continue to have programs like this one. Start a new monthly gift today at kvpr.org/donate.
And now to our main story. In the world of politics, mudslinging is common, but earlier this year, one smear campaign in Fresno bordered on the unethical. A political action committee, or PAC, was fined after sending out campaign mailers. Now, the PAC wasn't fined for the mailers, but for not submitting all required disclosure forms beforehand. And those mailers were significant. They accused Fresno City Council District 5 candidate Brandon Vang of a crime. Vang ultimately won the seat, beating out his opponent Elizabeth Jonathan Rosas. Now, in the small world of local politics, the consultant behind the mailers has ties to Jonathan Rosas' husband, Luis Chavez. He's a current Fresno County supervisor. Our newsroom partner Fresnoland was the news outlet that identified that consultant, and they reported that this whole situation calls into question how money through PACs is spent. It also raises the question of what's called dark money in politics. To discuss this more deeply, we invited Omar Rashad to the KVPR studios. He's a government accountability reporter for Fresnoland and recently did a deep dive on dark money in Fresno politics. Omar starts by explaining what exactly dark money is.
So researchers refer to dark money as political donations that you're not able to trace beyond a political nonprofit or a limited liability company. And so essentially what's going on here is there's a middleman. So I'm sure listeners have heard of political action committees. There are various requirements of disclosure for political action committees to reveal the money that they're getting, how they're using money. But if there's a middleman that's donating to PACs, a same level of transparency is not required on the part of those LLCs, those political nonprofit.
So this can get sort of complicated quickly, but I want to take it step by step here for listeners as we drill down to what's going on in Fresno. So a recent report of yours with Fresnoland sheds light on the political action committees that sent out political mailers against two candidates in Fresno County. So tell us about those two political PACs specifically and the mailers that they sent out.
Yeah, I'm glad we're taking a step back here. This can get super complicated easily, but essentially, just to rehash what happened in March, there was a newly formed PAC called Fresno Future Forward. It spent thousands on misleading mailers. And actually what happened in March was the Fresno City Attorney Andrew Jans fined this PAC, not because of the mailers, but because the PAC didn't file required disclosures to the city of Fresno. And essentially they got fined $1,000. And I, throughout the course of my reporting, was able to find an instance pretty similar to that in October and November last fall during the presidential election. There's a PAC called Neighborhoods for Government Integrity and Accountability Action, was also a newly formed PAC. It also sent out misleading mailers and specifically attacking a specific candidate in the race. And just worth pointing out, both Fresno Future Forward and Neighborhoods for Government Integrity and Accountability Action, these two PACs, sent out mailers in political races that involved a specific political couple. And we're talking about Luis Chavez, who is a current Fresno County supervisor. And we're talking about Elizabeth Jonathan Rosas, who ran for Southeast Fresno's council seat. And she's a sitting member of the Fresno Unified Board of Trustees. Yeah.
And they're married.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah, they're married.
So getting back to these two PACs that funded those mailers, your reporting found that the Fresno Future Forward PAC and this Neighborhoods for Government Integrity and Accountability PAC have links to Alex Tavlian. So can you tell us more about who Tavlian is and why that connection there is significant?
Yes. So Alex Tavlian isn't a political newcomer. He's been involved with a myriad of political races. You know, his past and current clients include Mike Carbasi, Gary Bredefeld, a number of sitting, county supervisors. And even back in 2020, Tavlian was part of the effort to help Jerry Dyer's mayoral campaign. And so, just sort of looking back at what happened in March, the city attorney finds the Fresno Future Forward PAC. The next month, we find out Alex Tavlian is its treasurer. And actually, in an email, City Attorney Jans identified Tavlian as the new principal officer of the PAC. And he told him that he needed to pay the fine issued to the PAC needed to be paid. And, another thing that we were able to report was the fine was paid on July 8th. It was paid via a business check from Park West Associates, and Park West Associates is a political consulting firm that's run by Tavlian. So to be clear, there's a PAC that was fined. Alex Tavlian was later revealed to be its treasurer, and Tavlian's company, political consulting firm called Park West Associates, pays the fine, and the city received that check on July 8th, and it was signed by Tavlian as well. But just sort of zooming out, I think it's significant to this conversation that Tavlian is a treasurer of a PAC that sent out misleading mailers in March. And back in October or the fall last year, Tavlian's political consulting company also sent out misleading mailers after being paid to do so by a newly formed PAC.
Perhaps we should explain what was on those mailers real quickly for folks who don't know, because I recall back when this was all happening, there was a lot of speculation and sort of hubbub over who was putting these mailers out because some of them were pretty damaging.
Yeah. I mean, when we talk about the March mailer, this mailer essentially claimed that a candidate, Brandon Vang, had engaged in statutory rape. And yeah, like the experts that I spoke to said, like, this was a pretty intense claim to make. And just to be very clear, Brandon Vang has not been charged with any crimes before or after the mailer. He went on to win the election for Southeast Fresno's council seat. And just to answer the other part of your question, back in the fall, the mailer that was sent out attacked the opponent of Luis Chavez, who was the incumbent Sal Quintero. And the mailer claimed that Quintero, who's a longtime Democrat, stands with MAGA Republicans. And it also claimed that he was silent when the Fresno County Board of Supervisors approved a quote-unquote book ban in November 2023. I was actually the reporter in the room during that vote, and I certainly witnessed that Quintero was one of two supervisors to vote against that proposal, and actually questioned the need for the proposal, the need for a quote-unquote book ban. So that was another misleading claim, on a mailer sent out last fall. Yeah.
Now, many voters in Fresno might not pay attention to local politics as closely as you do, but based on your reporting and everything you've learned, why do you think they should care about this topic?
So I think one interesting finding, in the investigation I published this week is that there's an Orange County company called Front Point Partners, and it has been using money to influence Fresno's elections. That company, Front Point Partners, has been represented by Alex Tavlian as a lobbyist in the past. This is according to city documents I got a hold of. That company has used its money in political races involving this political couple, Luis Chavez, Elizabeth Jonathan Rosas. So in the case of Jonathan Rosas, this Orange County company, mind you, 200 miles away from Fresno, donated a maximum contribution to Jonathan Rosas' campaign, earlier this year. In the case of Chavez, Front Point Partners donated $10,000 to this newly created PAC last fall, Neighborhoods for Government Integrity and Accountability Action. And this Orange County company essentially funded the majority of this PAC's monies that it used to essentially send out a political mailer. Once again, Tavlian's company sent out this political mailer last fall. And, I reached out to Tavlian, I reached out to Chavez, I reached out to Jonathan Rosas. All three of them either did not respond to my questions or declined to comment. And I think, if we have unanswered questions on the part of them, I really did try to get their perspective several times. And I really do wish we could fill in the blanks. And I think the only way we're able to do that is if, they're willing to actually, talk about, their political campaigns, the involvement of an Orange County company, and also their relationship with Alex Tavlian. His company has sent out misleading political mailers. There's a PAC that he's a treasurer of that also sent out misleading mailers. And at the end of the day, these mailers are designed to influence voters, influence outcomes of elections. So I think Fresno residents, deserve to know more information about how these organizations are sort of operating in Fresno.
Omar Rashad, government accountability reporter for our news partner, Fresnoland. Thanks so much for breaking this down for us.
Yeah, thank you.
And that's today's show. Today's episode was produced by Jonathan Linden and KVPR with support from the Central Valley Journalism Collaborative. I'm Elizabeth Arkalian. You can find the latest local news anytime at kvpr.org.
These days, there's so much news, it can be hard to keep up with what it all means for you, your family, and your community. The Consider This podcast from NPR features our award-winning journalism. 6 days a week, we bring you a deep dive on a news story and provide the context and analysis that helps you make sense of the news. We get behind the headlines. We get to the truth. Listen to the Consider This podcast from NPR.